This Storm Watch This Go Around is sponsored by Walls Industries. A lot to talk about in the tropics, especially into the western Pacific. That's where we're going to start as we look at our tropical update. And we're going to take you right there right now going into the Westpac, where once again we're going to talk about a Typhoon Zeb that used to be a super typhoon with winds well over 150 and at times up to 180 miles per hour. It did lash into the northern parts of the Philippines during the last 24 to 36 hours, causing a lot of damage there. At least 21 people have died. You can see the center of circulation right now, the eye of the typhoon, which is packing winds now down. It has weakened somewhat down to 100 miles per hour. But again, some further strengthening is likely. This is Taiwan, by the way. Looks like it's going to be lashed by Zeb as we look at the upcoming day. Then after that, it's going to be curving more towards the north and northeast. And the southernmost islands of Japan within a couple of days may have to deal with Zeb as well. Farther eastbound, we've got a new tropical storm, and that one is Babs. So again, we have Zeb, we have Babs, and this one again is expected to move its way toward the west-northwest, not be nearly as strong as what we saw with Zeb, which was a super typhoon, but not nearly that at the present hour. Let's talk about what's happening over the eastern Pacific right now. Tropical Depression 14E, 2 o'clock this morning, 11.7 degrees north, 92.3 degrees west. There it is, and again, its top sustained winds 35 miles per hour, west-northwesterly bound at 6 miles per hour. We can show you beginning to mill around right in through here. So again, we've got our brand new tropical depression right in through here. This, by the way, could become a tropical depression well south of Acapulco, but right now this is one we're mainly concerned with. And again, there's a blob of convection too as we look over into the extreme western Caribbean. Nothing to worry about there as of the present time. So again, we've got one tropical could be forming a tropical depression off to the north. This is one right here. And then what about Tropical Depression K? It is really weakened during the last 24 hours and expected to basically die as we look at the next 36 hours for sure. 13.6 degrees north, 121.5 degrees west, 985 miles southwest of Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. Top sustained winds 35 miles per hour. It continues to weaken. Let's see what we can see here. And that right there is K. Hardly anything left of it right now, just a blob or two of convection. But looks like as it moves west-southwestward, it's going to be dying a slow death over the next couple of days. Let's come back and check on the Atlantic Basin. This time of the year, during the month of October, the red spots, the hot spots, where we generally find some tropical development, if they are going to be occurring. And once again, we can see it's going to be the western Caribbean and just off the coast of Central America into the Gulf are usually, as we look at the second 10 days of October, some of the prime areas for tropical storm formation, and many times those do develop into hurricanes. What is going on right now? Basically a lack of convection or a lack of thunderstorms, nothing developing over the Gulf of Mexico right now. And take a look at the strong west and southwesterly winds. Tremendous wind shear right now over much of the Caribbean, which means anything that tries to organize just can't. So it looks like we're in for a tranquil period over much of the western parts of the Atlantic Ocean and all the way into the Gulf of Mexico with tremendous shear like that. Strong westerly winds, not conducive again for tropical storm formation. Again, we've got this blob of convection right in through here, nothing to worry about for the time being. So we'll keep our eyes on it, but it's well to the south. You can see as we look at the islands at the present time, maybe a couple of weak showers here, but again, it's westerly shear taking over much of the area. And basically, the Cape Verde season is gone. We can follow that for you right now, looking at a couple of more blobs of convection moving their way westward, but nothing organizing at the present time. For the upcoming day today, beautiful weather over the southeastern part of the country, developing storm in the nation's midsection could bring back more severe weather here later today. More on that coming up next.
Tropical weather systems are affected by so many variables.
We constantly monitor the situation.
If someone is safer by watching the Weather Channel, that's what it's all about.
This program was sponsored by Walls, leading the way outdoors.
If you work outside for a living, you should know Walls makes clothes to fit any job. We've been keeping working folks comfortable for over 50 years, with clothes for every season. Because we know working outside isn't a picnic, unless it's lunchtime. Walls, leading the way outdoors.
Walls quality outerwear is available at a retailer near you.
Witness the power of the Taro.
With over 22 years of Taro.
It's time now for Storm Watch, and this edition of Storm Watch is sponsored by Rayovac. Well, the tropics are becoming far more active, and at this point we have tropical storm warnings out for portions of the eastern Pacific. And at the same time, though, we still have a big typhoon in the western Pacific. And with all the details now, here's John Hope. John?
Well, thank you, Cheryl, and we'll start in with the typhoon in the West Pacific. This is Zeb. Not nearly as powerful as it was a couple days ago. The top winds are down to 90 miles an hour. It crossed over the northern Luzon in the Philippines yesterday, and then the center of it has turned north, and it looks as if it's going to skim right east of Taiwan. So Taiwan is going to be on the weaker side of it, so perhaps the winds won't be all that destructive there, but they are getting very heavy rain. I've seen reports out of Taiwan already where as much as 11 inches of rain has fallen in the last 6 to 12 hours. So very heavy rain, and that rain is going to persist for quite some time because this storm isn't moving all that rapidly. We've had reports of the Philippines of a lot of devastation there, and about 30 fatalities confirmed so far, and we are afraid there might be more than that. I would point out that to the east of that we have another tropical storm. That's Tropical Storm Babs, and even though it's drawing pretty close to the Philippines, it's actually forecast to turn before it gets to the Philippines, and we certainly hope that's the case because they don't need another typhoon in the Philippines right away, and this is forecast to increase in strength and actually become a typhoon. Well, this is a tropical depression that we have off the coast of Guatemala and Mexico. Top winds are just 35 miles an hour, but it's moving toward the north-northwest at 6, and it looks as if the center is actually going to move inland, and we do expect it to increase to tropical storm strength, but right now it doesn't look as if it's going to get to be a hurricane. But what we're concerned about primarily is extremely heavy rains. And the government of Guatemala and Mexico have put out some warnings. They extend from Sipacati here in Guatemala up to Puerto Arista in Mexico, and then a tropical storm watch up the coast farther to Puerto Angel in Mexico. We can show you a satellite picture, that a visible satellite picture, and it is getting much better organized, we think, and it could be a tropical storm before very long. And again, the north-northwest movement is going to bring it into the coast before too long. I think before it gets a chance to increase to beyond the tropical storm, but nevertheless it's going to bring some heavy rains and potential for mudslides and that sort of thing in Guatemala and the southeastern part of Mexico. We have another depression here. This is K. It was a tropical storm, and now it's reduced down to just a depression. The winds are only 35 miles an hour, and it's drifting off toward the southwest and really not going to bother anybody. Right there it is. So turning to the Atlantic, we don't really see anything out there that worries us at all. We're past the peak of the hurricane season. September 10th, we have this secondary peak here in October, and primarily because of so many storms that have developed in the past this time of year in the southwestern Caribbean. But we don't have anything in the southwestern Caribbean today, and we don't think we're likely to. We do see quite a flare-up of showers there, but we still have upper-level westerly winds there, and we are not really expecting that to develop. Furthermore, it's not very far from this Depression 14 here in the Pacific, and usually don't see anything develop in the Caribbean when you have that kind of a depression in the Pacific. Nothing out here east of the islands. That tropical wave is pretty well dissipated. And even though we have some pretty good-looking disturbances coming off Africa and moving toward the west, we have upper-level westerlies there too, and do not expect to see any development. So that's the tropics, so now we're going to turn you back to Cheryl for the USA weather. Cheryl?
All right, John, as we take a look at the latest surface map for the nation, we can see that we still have a low-pressure area positioned across the northeast. Still some leftover rains this morning, but nothing really that terribly heavy. The worst weather conditions, though, without a doubt, will start to develop across the nation's midsection. We have a very complicated area of low pressure. Actually, a couple lows working their way across portions of the central Rockies, being enhanced by another disturbance that's swinging down across the Rockies, and that will help to enhance your precipitation today. It's a very unstable weather pattern, so big thunderstorms will likely be popping across Nebraska and Iowa, and these thunderstorms today could be producing some large hail and damaging, destructive winds. We'll have an update on the potential for severe weather, and we'll check out current weather from coast to coast coming up next.
There's snow in some parts of the country already, while other areas will see rain. Get the weather that matters to you ahead on Weather Center after your local forecast.
This program was sponsored by Rayovac Rechargeable Alkaline.
Every battery says they're better. One thing's for sure. With Rayovac, you get long-lasting alkaline power for less money. If you don't think they're just as good, you get your money back. You heard it here first.
Trimmer users, if you're tired of handheld trimmers that strain your arms and back and are so frustrating to use, here's great news about the original revolutionary DR trimmer on wheels. Now there's an all-new smaller DR that's
We've got some stormy weather firing up in the plains and the potential for quite a bit of snow in the west. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Right now, our tropical update with hurricane expert Dr. Steve Lyons.
Well, thank you, Janetta, and welcome to the tropical update. Boy, the Pacific Basin has been very active the last several days, and it'll continue to be so the next several. And let's go out first to the far western Pacific. We've been talking about our Typhoon Zeb that was a super typhoon when it ran over the island of Luzon. Now it's moving north at about 16 miles per hour, and it's moving offshore from the island of Taiwan. However, it's producing a lot of onshore flow and upslope flow that's producing a massive amount of rainfall. It's going to accelerate off here to the north and pretty much follow this track up here. Currently the winds are 90 miles an hour near the eye wall. Winds over the island are not quite that strong, which is good news. We also have a tropical storm Bab that's moving here, and it's going to affect the Philippines the next couple of days as well, so they're in for some more trouble there. Currently the winds there are about 60 miles per hour, just sub-hurricane force by about 15 miles per hour. Now, as we go off into the eastern Pacific, we have our tropical depression 14E, which is just to the south and east of the Gulf of Tehuantepec here. Current information on it, winds 35 miles per hour, so just subtropical storm force. It's moving to the northwest at 6, right into the Gulf of Tehuantepec there, and we expect it to become a tropical storm here in the next 24 hours or so. We have some tropical storm advisories consistent with that expectation of becoming tropical storm. We have tropical storm warnings from Cisbecate, Guatemala up to Puerto Arista, Mexico, and then tropical storm watches from Puerto Arista, Mexico up to Puerto Angel, Mexico. Those could be changed all the way across the tropical storm warnings later if it becomes a tropical storm, but right now they're just watches and warnings there in anticipation of tropical storm. We also have our tropical depression K out here, way out in the Pacific, all by its lonesome here at 13.4 north, 121.7 west. Winds still 35 miles per hour. It's almost stationary. It had been moving to the southwest slowly. And we can look at the satellite imagery and get an idea of where all these systems are. Here's our tropical depression K out here, rather small little system. Here's our tropical depression that we were talking about that's forecast to move generally into the Gulf of Tehuantepec. And here's another system up here that could become a tropical depression very soon. We'll have to watch this as well. There's a very good spin in the low cloud field just off to the southwest of the deeper thunderstorm activity. So all three of these systems are of interest, these two primarily for the coast of Mexico and Central America, and this one just a marine interest here. Now, as we go off and look at the Atlantic Basin, we see quite a difference. Here our tropical depression and our other disturbance out here over Mexico, and we see two directions of flow, from the west up to the north and from the east off to the south, a ridge of high pressure over them. The difference in the tropical Atlantic basin is everywhere the flow is unidirectional out of the west, and that is unfavorable for tropical development, which is good news. And when we go to each of the areas of the tropical basin, we see in the Gulf of Mexico northwesterly flow and really fairly clear weather there. Very strong winds, no chance for development. Down here we have a lot of thunderstorm activity, and it could be a hazard to mariners. Watch out for thunderstorm and lightning out in that area, but no tropical development expected with the stronger winds aloft, although this area of thunderstorms could push into the Gulf of Mexico the next several days. Out here in the central Caribbean, straight easterly flow and not much going on there. A little upper level low here just over Puerto Rico that may flare up some weather there. And all this thunderstorm activity up in here over the Bahamas and off to the northeast is associated with an old frontal remnant, and very fast winds aloft will preclude tropical development for the next several days. Now, this massive area of thunderstorm activity moving to the west. Big area of thunderstorms will affect the islands later, but again, upper level westerlies not expected to do much there either. And off the African coast, not much going on there with upper level westerlies, so we're in good shape. Let's get back to that rain in the plains now with Janetta.
All right, we talk about the potential for severe weather right in here later on this afternoon as this low is going to start to kick out. A new low will be kicking on in the upper levels of the atmosphere, enhancing your potential for snow in Salt Lake City and the Wasatch, and we could pick up as much as 6 to 12 inches of snow in certain locales. Here's your potential for severe weather affecting I-29 and I-90. We'll talk more about that coming up next in Weather Center.
Rain lingers in New England as a new system brings thunderstorms to the northern plains and snow to the Rockies. Find out if you'll need a jacket or an umbrella. Watch Weather Center next.
I could not believe how much cat hair the whirlwind picked up.
The greatest feature? No bags.
It's like a cyclone going on inside my vacuum cleaner.
It just came at the right time for all the filth that was coming through the house. It is not there anymore. It went through this thing and went away.
Cyclonic action. It's the concept of channeling air that makes a Eureka whirlwind so effective.
I have really bad allergies.
The whirlwind's true HEPA sealed filtration captures all the particles right here, 100%.
And I cleaned from top to bottom with
severe weather in the central plains as we head through the late overnight hours and on into the day on Friday. We'll touch more on that in a moment. But let's start off this Storm Watch with a look at the tropics. And this Storm Watch is sponsored by Touchstone Energy. Now, the tropics very active in the Pacific right now. Fortunately, for folks in the U.S. and the Caribbean, things in the Atlantic are quiet. They can be a little bit more on the active side in October, but that activity is shifted into the East Pacific. And the West Pacific has been very active too. We had an incredibly intense Typhoon Zeb just a few days ago, which slammed into the northern parts of the Philippines and the island of Luzon, did all kinds of damage, then weakened, as these systems always do over land, then has pretty much sideswiped Taiwan with some locally heavy rain, but is very disorganized. Maximum sustained winds around 90 miles an hour now, and what's left of this system as it continues to weaken should move up toward the southern Japan islands. And there'll be a lot of rain there and some wind, but it's a ghost of its former self, really. But fast on the heels of that, we have Tropical Storm Babs with winds upwards of 65 miles an hour, and is forecast to strengthen as it continues to move in a very similar path that Zeb did. Now, it's forecast to become a typhoon and maybe impact Luzon once again, but we'll have to wait and see. Earlier it was felt that it may kind of recurve or move east of the islands and then out east of Taiwan, but now the forecast track a little bit more toward the west-northwest. We don't think it'll strengthen as much as Zeb did, but still, to get hit twice by two typhoons within a few days would be awfully nasty for the Philippines. Now, here in the East Pacific, we have 1, 2, 3 different systems. One of these is the tropical depression. The other, a tropical storm. That would be Lester over here. That's a new tropical storm. This is Tropical Depression K. And this is not classified as of yet, but it could be very close to being a depression within the next 12 hours or so. Let's talk about K first. Now, K is pretty much out there in the middle of nowhere, drifting slowly to the southeast now. Can you believe that? It's making a little bit of a loop and may eventually move more toward the east. But it is very, very weak and is expected to stay at around 35 miles per hour. Tropical Storm Lester, on the other hand, is up to 50 miles an hour, drifting toward the northwest. at about 7 miles an hour, centered at 13.2 north, 93.3 west, or about 130 miles south-southwest of Tapachula, Mexico. So that's pretty close to the coast. And because of that, there are some advisories out. There are tropical storm warnings up right now from Puerto Arista down to Zipacate in Guatemala, as well as hurricane watches, and from Puerto Arista farther on toward the west. And I think these have actually been extended even farther west, and we'll update this frame for you shortly. There are tropical storm watches in effect. Let's head back toward the Atlantic Basin, and again, we are just past this little peak in our hurricane season climatology curve and starting to head on the downward slide here as far as number of tropical systems back over the years. And really we see nothing in the Caribbean. This is Lester, by the way, spinning around here in the Gulf of Tehuantepec, getting very close to the Guatemalan coast. In fact, some of the rain already impacting there. But nothing on the Caribbean side. The upper level wind's way too strong here for any kind of development. And even though we have a lot of squally weather out in the middle Atlantic, a lot of westerly winds shearing a lot of these thunderstorms. And there's going to be some heavier rain moving in toward the islands, Barbados first, then the leewards and windwards, but no tropical organization seen here. And even though we continue to get a few tropical waves coming off the African coast, the upper level winds are way too strong for any kinds of development. So the eastern Pacific, particularly with our newly formed tropical storm Lester, has to be monitored very closely. As will this area in the Central Plains. Notice these brighter white dots here in northwest Texas. Those are the beginnings of a few thunderstorms here. A lot of warm and moist air is starting to get pulled northbound. Dew points well up into the 60s and even the low 70s. And as some of that energy from the Rockies pulls out, first early in the morning, we could have storms in the western high plains moving east through the day on Friday.
Sunshine and snow form part of the fall weather picture for the U.S. Find out what's on the horizon for your area. Watch Weather Center after your local forecast.
This program was sponsored by Touchstone Energy. We are America's electric cooperatives.
Partnership means growth. That's the way it's been for America's electric co-ops and America's businesses and communities. We've always kept affordable power flowing steadily and reliably. Now, we're joining other local co-ops to form a nationwide alliance, Touchstone Energy, to ensure state-of-the-art technology and personalized service. It's the power of human connections. We are America's electric cooperatives.
If you're ready for your own home and money is tight, you're probably asking yourself questions like, what kind of home can we get without a huge down payment? How about top quality homes like these? Or you're wondering, what kind of home can we afford on our income? Say $35,000 or $40,000 a year. What if you can have one like these? And if your credit isn't absolutely perfect, you might worry, what kind of home can we get if our bank turns us down? What if you could have one of